Well, hey guys, wow, we're in a bit of a situation here. New Zealand is in lockdown, and for those of you who have been following along, we have been doing a big road trip up on the North Island. We're in the midst of doing a 5-week road trip, which was cut short. So we have more videos coming out after this video is going to be posted of that trip. I just haven't edited them and posted them yet. So this video, we're going to be talking about the differences between lockdown here in New Zealand versus when we did it in America, because we were there in America when the initial COVID lockdown started. But before all that, we're going to give a little bit of a breakdown of where we were when we found out lockdown happened, and then kind of our journey down to our home down here in Queenstown. It is kind of cold out here actually, but it's still pretty, so we decided to film out here, but yeah.
The wind picked up and I'm a wuss. So.
Yeah. All right guys, so we were traveling up in the North Island. We were in Napier the day that we found out about lockdown, and about an hour before we even heard about anything about the lockdown, we had decided, hey, you know what, we probably had enough of the North Island. Let's head down to the South Island. So we booked our ferry ticket for the next day.
Yeah.
And we were going to drive down. And as we were driving down to go to Wellington to catch the ferry to go to the South Island, that's when they announced the lockdown. So yeah, we were kind of in a conundrum because we actually thought that the ferry that we had just booked for the next day was canceled.
Yeah. So what actually happens so New Zealand announced the lockdown pretty quickly after finding the case, but then also the lockdown was for a few hours after it was announced. So it was announced at 6 p.m. or something, and then the lockdown was supposed to start at midnight that night. So we were just like, oh, we just booked our ferry for 8 hours after the lockdown's supposed to start, so I guess that's canceled now. So now what are we going to do? We're going to be stuck up here, in the North Island,
in our car.
In our car.
Which is a little Toyota Wish,
yeah.
With a baby.
Not only that, it was forecasted to just rain for all week, so we're like,
stuck.
No. So what did we do then? We actually contacted my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, and we decided to drive. She was only probably a couple hours away from where we were, and we decided to stay with her for the night, and then
we were kind of expecting to stay with her for the full lockdown.
Yeah.
Assuming we were thinking it was going to be 3 days initially, and we'll talk about all that later. But
then the next morning the ferry called and they're like, hey, are you guys still coming? We have you booked for this ferry. And I'm like, say what? It's not canceled? She goes, no, we have 48 hours to get people home. I was like, well, that makes sense that people should be able to get home, but I just thought, lockdown, you're stranded.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we missed the ferry that we had booked, but we had one booked, so they're really nice.
The only available next ferry was at 2 a.m.
Yeah, but it was so nice that they actually were able to get us on that 2 a.m.
So someone else took our canceled ticket, and we were able to get a spot on the 2 a.m.
Yeah. So we stayed at our sister-in-law's for one night, then made it down onto the ferry to the South Island, and then drove the 11 hours down to Queenstown. And we're at our place right now. So we're really, really thankful that we were able to make it down and be at our place. So anyway, that's our experience with the lockdown. And now I guess we're going to dive into the differences that we've seen between how New Zealand has handled lockdown versus how it was done in America. And
I'm sure there's plenty of differences. We're just going to cover a couple of the ones that we've noticed.
Yep. So we lived in the outskirts of Chicago. We call it Chicagoland. Everyone kind of thinks that we're joking, but it's actually called Chicagoland. And we were out in Woodstock, Illinois on our hobby farm. And so out in the country, when lockdown was announced, it was kind of scary just because it was just like, all right, this new disease that everyone's taking pretty serious. But at the same time, we were out in the country, and we didn't really see too many people on our normal days anyway.
Not a whole lot changed for us. And I think we've covered this and talked about it before a little bit, but we were renovating our house still, and so we, doing the final touches before it went up for sale.
Yeah.
And so most of our trips were honestly to Home Depot or Menards and home improvement stores.
And those were all kept open during the American lockdown just because they said those were essential. So people got to keep renovating their homes.
Right,
so
that's right. And
we're really grateful.
Yeah, we were, And then I was also working. I was a nurse, and so being an essential worker, I still went to work.
And then I run my website business, so I was still working as well.
Still working from home. Nick, he didn't go to daycare or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much the same. Yeah, the
experience
same
for us.
The only difference was that we couldn't go to church.
Yeah, that was a big difference. Where churches then moved to online or just stopped for the time being.
Yeah.
And no one really knew how long it was going to be. I think they initially said it was going to be 2 weeks to stop the curve, but then it kind of got extended, but kind of not. So so America. Being America is just awesome, first off. Me being American and Naomi being, from New Zealand.
I was shaking my head a little bit.
There's a lot of things that you just kind of got to laugh about the American spirit. But pretty much after the first 2 weeks in America during lockdown, everyone was obligatory to what the lockdown standards were.
A lot of people. Yeah.
Just about everyone stayed home. If you went out, you wore a mask. Everyone pretty much followed the rules. But after those 2 weeks, I think they said we're going to extend it. I don't know how long.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, all right, wait a second. We got our freedoms here.
Yeah.
And so most people just kind of stopped doing whatever lockdown procedures there were.
There are also many cases where, or most cases where the rules weren't enforced anyway. And so...
Well, I remember after the first 2 weeks, the sheriff of our county literally made a public announcement saying, hey guys, just so you know, we're not going to enforce any lockdown procedures at all. So you guys can all do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want. We're not going to enforce it.
So stores started opening again, and then it was very strange just because, the way America did it was just every county seemed to be doing things differently, but then every state did things differently, and there was really, everyone was all over the place.
There's no way to enforce borders, so if you didn't like what was going on, you could just go somewhere else for a little bit, and it was kind of,
So in New Zealand, it's done a lot different because in America, there's 330 million people, where in New Zealand, and we kind of joke because it's actually 328 million, but we can round up to 330 because 2 million people isn't a big deal in America. We're in New Zealand, there's 5 million people. Sometimes I say just under, sometimes it's just over. I actually don't know the real number, but you have to, I can't say 6 or 4 because it's a big difference. But the majority of those people are up in the North Island. There's under 1 million people in the South Island where we live. It's something like 900,000. I'm sorry if I don't get the exact number. I don't want to miss anyone out, but it's enough. It's small enough where it matters every number. And then it's also a small little island nation. And so the way that they can do this here, they can actually do a real lockdown and actually count on, COVID being essentially eradicated with the border shut and with the proper inbound people being properly quarantined. Where in America, every state's done differently. If one city really quarantines perfect, there's no COVID, someone from another state is just going to travel in, or another city or another county or
another country.
Yeah, or another country.
It's not, it's not an isolated island.
Yeah.
It's joined to other countries.
So it's really tough when people do compare and saying New Zealand's doing it the right way, because you can't do it the way that New Zealand's doing
Not
it.
At all.
Just about anywhere in the world, really. They're really doing it in a unique way because they are so unique. And we're really blessed to be here for the time being. And so thankful we're in New Zealand. And I'm now a New Zealand permanent resident, for those of you who don't know. And Naomi's obviously a New Zealand citizen.
Yeah.
All right. So in New Zealand, what we've definitely noticed is people take the lockdown very seriously, where, we already touched on, they don't really do that in America. Not always, not everyone at least.
In America, I would say that the lockdowns tend to be very political. And so you've got one end of the spectrum versus the other. And it's almost become like a political brand or identity as to whether you agree or disagree with the lockdowns. And so there's quite a lot of tension, and it's very polarized. In New Zealand, there isn't actually a main party that is opposed to the lockdowns, even the conservative parties. So right now we're run by the Labour government, which is more left-leaning, and then the conservative government, which is more right-leaning, also is on board with the lockdowns. They completely agree with the eradication strategy, with the elimination strategy, and the majority of the population is on board as well. So it is a very well-received strategy that they're doing, and the majority of New Zealanders are, happy to live our normal lives other than a few short weeks of lockdown.
So the way that they initially did the lockdowns was there was one person in New Zealand this time who was found to have COVID, and they thought it was the Delta strand. They weren't really sure. But because of that one person, they knew that one person was traveling all over the place. Not all over the place, but yeah, they were in contact with other people where they knew other people were going to show up to be infected, unfortunately.
Their thought process was, if there's, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So if there's one person who has it, there's probably about 100 people who have it by the time that we found out. So
they initially did a 3-day lockdown, hard lockdown. They said, okay, 3 days, we're going to see what's going to happen and then reevaluate from there.
Then Auckland and the Coromandel, where that gentleman had been known to have been, they were a 7-day lockdown announced straight from the get-go. But the rest of the country was put into a 3-day lockdown.
And then after the 3 days, they then reevaluated, and there's been something like 50-something cases. It might be more at this point.
Yep. Yesterday it was 51 total cases.
So after that, they said, okay, guys, it's worth it to extend this lockdown another 4 days, and we're going to reevaluate after there.
And not only that, New Zealand does, I would say, a pretty good job of contact tracing. So people sign in when they go to different places. It's voluntary, but most people would still sign in when they're going to places. And so the government's able to contact people when they've been in close contact with someone who's had COVID. And so there were, even in the South Island, there were people who were known to have been at the same locations of interest, at the same time as the person who had the case. So with that being said, knowing that direct contacts were all scattered throughout the country, they decided that it was best to put the whole country into lockdown.
Yep. And that goes for people like us. Like, we were up in the North Island, we were in the Coromandel at some point. Yep. And so, it just makes sense that we're all in lockdown because we're down here in the South Island now, and we don't want to spread this around. Yep. But every case has been isolated to just the North Island at this point, which is really good for the South Island as well. And we hope it stays that way. And we hope the North Island, dwindles down to less and less cases as well.
So with lockdowns in New Zealand, there's 4 phases. Phase 4 is what we are currently in. That's the most extreme phase of lockdown. So in phase 4, it even dwindles down what a lot of people would consider essential services. So for example, you can have supermarkets open, but you can't have smaller food stores like butchers or things like that. They're not able to be open. It's just the supermarkets. You can have, health clinics are able to be open. And then you've got pharmacies and gas stations.
Yep.
And then, the food supply chain, and obviously there's a couple other things that are open, but pretty much that's it.
Yep. And then if you are going to go to one of those things, like if we go to the grocery store, only one of us are supposed to go, and we have to wear masks, and then we have to use the contact tracing app to show that, we were at that grocery store at that period of time.
And there's people who are making sure that everyone's, staying 6 feet apart and all of that. So.
Yep.
And also the lockdowns are actually enforced. So it is considered mandatory. So if you do not comply with, mask wearing or staying within your regions and things like that, then you are issued either a warning or a fine, depending on the severity. So it is enforced.
I'm really curious if it is enforced though, because I don't know, one of the observations I've seen with New Zealand is there's not as nearly as many police officers, which is awesome because it seems like they're not really necessary.
By enforced, I mean in the entire country within the 3 days of 5 million people, there's been 20 infringements.
Wow, that's amazing. Everyone's pretty much on board, which is really cool. I think everyone's pretty much in the agreement that, hey, you guys, let's spend a couple days, tight lockdown, let's get this out, and then we can live our normal life like we've been doing for the past year or so, which has been amazing. So for us here in Queenstown, we're in the outskirts of Queenstown. Obviously, we live in a beautiful, fantastic area. As I was driving down from the North Island, like pretty much saw like almost the entire country on this drive. I kept saying like, man, we live in the most beautiful place, which we're so grateful. And where we live, like we don't really have like neighbors either. And so we really haven't seen anybody. And there's hiking trails that we go on where we don't see anybody.
Just walk out our door and go down, next to the river, and
So
really nice.
for us, things aren't too bad, and we have internet where I can keep working, and Naomi's not working at the moment, and so so things aren't really too different for us right now either, other than the fact that again, probably church. We can't see our church friends and we can't go to church.
Also, with us having been in the Coromandel where COVID was, we also, when we first got down here, asked someone to bring us a few groceries and drop them off at our door rather than going into the grocery store ourselves, just because we just wouldn't want to.
Rather play it safe.
Wouldn't want to start something in the South Island.
And it's funny because generally we're more conservative, especially in America, where things are so extreme. We're not to any extreme. We're really kind of more middle ground, if anything. But we would lean more towards conservative. I can't even say that word. That's how conservative we are. But we are kind of leaning that way. But it's interesting being here in New Zealand. We see that we can live a normal life, and we can actually do a hard lockdown and actually eradicate COVID to the point where there's no restrictions. Yep. Where in America it was kind of like, there's no hope, guys.
There's a lot of half measures, suppression strategies, and a
lot of measures didn't make sense. Like they were saying, you have to wear a mask when you drive in your car alone, and it's just like, this is stupid. This is So.
And I think it was like people were seeing the reality of the situation and seeing that these measures aren't like what's the point here? What's the end goal? What are these measures? You told us the end goal was to slow the curve to not overwhelm our healthcare systems, and we've done that. And so there seemed to have been a lot of things that didn't make sense, and so that really hampered the trust that people had in the government.
And it was tough too, because it was like, all right, in America there was that 2 weeks to lower the curve. That happened, and then it was like the lockdowns and restrictions almost were in greater force after that, and people again, it was just so polarizing to where people were, and it's unfortunately still like that today. It's been over a year at this point. And it is so polarizing in America. It's so political, and it's really sad, unfortunately. But I understand too, because it's like, where's the end? It was supposed to be the end hopefully when the curve is lowered, but that didn't end it. And then it was, okay, guys, we're going to get a vaccine out. But then unfortunately that didn't end it either. And so...
so it's really a question of so we didn't mean to get into all of this, but with lockdowns, New Zealand has chosen elimination because they can. And, that's an achievable goal. In the States, they've chosen suppression. And honestly, that's pretty much their only option. And so with the suppression strategies, it really is a bit of a roller coaster, because you've got a wave and then you need to implement, stricter things, and then you kind of let it go a little bit and then it picks up again. So it's, I think in the rest of the world, honestly, it's just a really hard situation.
It really
is. So in conclusion, we're really grateful that we are where we are, that we have, the privilege of living here. So as surprising as it is for us to say, we are actually on board with the lockdown. in America, we were kind of on the camp of no, we
initially
we
were, because it made sense, but then like we said, anyway. Well, that's kind of where we're at, guys. Praise God that we're in New Zealand. Praise God that we're at our house in Queenstown, and we can just essentially live free out here in the wilderness, kind of. But at the same time, there's proper restrictions going on, so the rest of the country can do the same. All right, guys, we're gonna go inside. It's a little cold.
So we're really grateful that we are where we are, but our hearts are still heavy for the people who are affected by this a lot more than we are. We've still been affected. We've had close friends who have been hospitalized and really ill, and friends who have passed away from COVID as well. So our hearts are heavy. It's not like we feel removed from everything, but we wanted to just express, I guess, a little bit of our empathy and yeah, our sadness for everything that's going on as well.
You know, in the end, if we passed away, we have our trust in Jesus. We know exactly where we're going when we die. A lot of people don't have that, guys. And so if that's you, if you're, you know, a little afraid of what might happen when you pass away, just leave us a message. Shoot us a message on Facebook or on YouTube, or leave a comment below. And I'd love to, talk to you about what the Bible says. And just know that God loves you, and He loves you so much. He sent His only Son to take your place. And so on that cross when Jesus died. So put your trust in Jesus, guys. And with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate you all. And we're over 1,100 subscribers at this point. Woo! It's just pretty cool. Yeah, people actually watch us. Wow. So thank you guys very much. And leave a comment below. Keep us in your prayers. And if you have any specific prayer requests, please leave them in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. And hope you guys are having a very, very blessed day. We'll talk to you all soon.
Bye.